Let's talk to Herman. Pronouns he, him, calling in all the way from the frozen wasteland of Canada, who wants to convince the host that God is real because everything he has observed has a creator. Let's talk about it. Herman, you're on the line with Forrest and Dan. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. I actually called in a month ago and made the point, and I pre-hung up, but you guys told me to call back in because you said the answer is very simple, but you never explained the answer. And my point of view is that everything I observe. Hello?
I don't know who you spoke to.
Were you talking to me or Forrest, or were you talking to some other host? Because I can't advocate for what other hosts.
I was talking to Forrest and some other guy.
Okay.
No, those two sound awful.
All right.
All right. So go on then. What do you have for us today, and we'll try to dig into it.
All right, so we have unanimous observations of things begetting things, actually more so than 1 = 1, because everything all numbers are created. So there's more proof of the axiom of creation than the axiom of numbers. So when I look at anything in my room, for instance, me, I have two creators, my mother and father. The sound you're hearing, I am creating that. Everything, it's not even look at the trees. You can be blind and hear a fart and you know someone created the fart. Everything you observe has a creator. Energy is created from, if it's light energy, a light source like our sun. If it's thermal energy, a heat source like a fire. If it's kinetic energy, a motion, something that created motion is the creator of that energy. So everything I observe, even God has a creator. Men create gods and gods in their mind, and Satan's in their mind. Everything you observe has a creator. Why wouldn't the reality? For instance, you're at a black and red roulette table, let's say, and there's no green. And red is a thing with a creator, and black is a thing without a creator. And all you have is observations of red, things begetting things. It's been red for 38 years that I've been watching this roulette table. Whatever I look at has some type of creator. Why would I bet on black? I know the machine's broken.
So here's, you gave us a lot there, and I immediately have a couple of questions. First of all, just to be clear, when you talk about energy being energy isn't created. Energy is just, it changes forms. It's transferred and it's released. It's emitted. That normally I wouldn't be pedantic about that, but given the specific circumstance about what you're calling in here, I feel like that's important to point out because that kind of brings us back to the beginning of the universe where you're saying it must have a creator. Paradoxically, you then said God also has a creator. Gods are created by men to explain things or whatever like that. But ultimately, your actual argument that you appear to be making here is that the universe needed some sort of creator, which I would presume we could colloquially call a god, which isn't what you're referring to when you talk about the ones, that men create to fill in the gaps of their understanding. So that actual creator that actually created the universe, what created that guy?
I don't know, but that does not mean it does not have a creator. Just because I don't like, I don't know the next 1 = 1. Yeah,
I didn't say it did. I'm asking you, do you believe that the creator of the universe had a creator?
I don't know.
Okay. So how come you get to say you don't know, and we can't say we don't know where things come from?
That is exactly my point. Is when we talk about the beginning of the universe, we have a line where we can say we don't know what happened there. We don't have the math. We don't even have the right questions to ask. I don't know what created the universe, or if anything created the universe. That question is inaccessible to me. And you're saying no, it is absolutely a creator. But then one step before that is where your I don't know is. And I don't get why you're cool with doing that.
I don't know what created we'll call it the creator of creators. But if something had to create time, whatever set the first object in motion created time. If there's no before, then it leads to a primary creator, a first creator that created time. And how our reality's physics works may not apply to its reality because it is in a different reality, a timeless reality.
How do you know how do you know, Herman, that our reality's physics and whatever else you said, like the laws of physics that we exist under today, how do you know that those were exactly the same just before the Big Bang, whatever before the Big Bang means?
I don't.
Exactly.
Right.
So and neither do I.
Different is what
because I'm not a physicist. I don't even know if we have a way to assess that question. So here we are, both of us ignorant about what was going on before the concept of before had any meaning. And you're saying a guy was there and he did some stuff. And then I don't know before that.
No, I never said a guy. I said a creator. There's a big difference.
It's a guy.
I'm not even defining it. Well, then it was a guy if it was a guy. But here's the thing. 1 equals 1, and the next one will equal 1 even without seeing it. Because all the ones previous to it have equaled 1. That's the axiom of numbers. So know everything you look at has a creator. The next thing will have a creator, even though you don't know what the thing is.
The problem is you're defining the system that this exists under follows the same rules as the system itself. I mean, this is like when Christians say, oh, how can you prove the scientific method? Because you can't prove science with science. This is the same kind of like problem of like metaphysics, where it's like, Forrest already pointed this out, but I don't think you addressed this, which is you're assuming that something had to come before because our universe allegedly works in that something has to come before. But how do we know that the system itself has to work that way? Why does time itself have to work that way?
Because that's how time works.
But why does it have to be for time itself, though? That's the thing. Like, you're talking about observations outside the observable universe, right? We can't extrapolate on that. We don't have the ability to.
I say I don't know. But just like I know the next one will equal 1, I know something created it. Now
but you don't.
Convince me if you don't.
If you literally just said I don't know, and now you're saying I do know. You said it in like the same sentence there. Like that's not how that works. You just don't know, right?
Okay. Do you know the next one will equal 1?
That's not what we're asking. We're talking about what happened before the beginning of the universe. That has nothing to do with the next sequence of numbers.
I know 1 equals 1 equals 1 equals 1, and I know that the next one will equal 1. Yes, I don't know where the first one came from. And you're saying I do know where the first one came from. It was another 1, but I don't know what came for that. And I'm just saying, why the fuck are you adding this extra thing in there? Just be honest and say you don't know a thing rather than saying I don't know this other thing that is contingent upon this thing that I don't know exists, but I'm saying it exists and then I don't know about the other thing beyond that. It's so weird.
Yeah.
The easiest way for you guys to convince me to become untruthful atheist is to name one single thing with proof that does not have a creator. And if you look around in your room right now, you see all those books behind Velke. Every single one of them is created. So go ahead, pick up an object and show me this wasn't created, and I'll show you.
Yeah, that's not necessary. I can go grab a rock from outside that wasn't created.
Right.
You're trying to get
just a rock.
Me to bet on red, a thing without a creator, or black, a thing without a creator, when all I have is observations of red. I'm gonna bet on red, guys.
But see, this is another problem with your argument, is that you're defining creation in a very specific way. Like Forrest just gave an example of a rock, right? Because when we think about rocks, we think about nature, and we don't typically define nature as having intent. Like we just define it as like natural forces. So like in Forrest's conception, he's absolutely right. Like the rock outside his house, I mean, unless it's like from a construction site or something, it's probably just been formed by natural forces and has like no intent to its quote unquote design, right? But like you might say, oh, well, somebody designed the physical forces, in which we would respond, how do you know that? Because I certainly don't know that. And you certainly don't know that, but you're assuming that that's how it works. And so we're just back at square one.
Videos of all.
I literally can make some points about exactly this. Here I have a camera. This was created. Somebody intentionally put these parts together to make this thing. This is a created object. Next to me over here, I have a little slice of agate crystal. This was not created. It just came together by natural processes. Now here's a middle ground. Here I have a scallop shell. This was created by an animal, but it did not have intention behind it. So arguably not created, just another natural process, but also still had living material. See, there's a lot of nuance in this, but you are using the word created to mean anything that had anything contingent and anything with an antecedent, anything with anything before it. And at the end of the day, you're going to run to the Big Bang and say, okay, now I don't know what came before this. And Dan and I are honest enough to say, I don't even know how to ask a question about what came before that, because the Big Bang is also the beginning of time as we know it and space as we know it. So what happened outside of everywhere in a time that isn't doesn't make any sense. You, however, are not honest enough to do that. You say something came before something else, therefore there's some fucking guy that lives in a place that can't, and he made the universe, and whatever came before him is the big mystery. And I just don't understand how you're comfortable being that dishonest with yourself.
I said creator, not guy. And all those things you have shown on the screen have had a creator, including the rocks that are created by volcanoes and other forms of creation. And yes, it is a natural.
Herman, Jesus of fucking Christland, Herman, I just covered that.
He literally
I just explained why you're using the word that way and why it doesn't work for this conversation. The last thing I said was about that. You weren't listening. You were waiting for your turn to speak.
That is the definition of creator, a person or thing that creates something. When a volcano creates land or rocks, it is a creator. That's why we have these words in English. This is so we can define the our around us.
Yeah, and it's also why serious people that look at this issue don't use that word, because it obviously has very ambiguous connotations, right?
No, because everything has a creator.
No, yes. Herman, again, only Christians talk about like phenomenology this way. Like actual people who study this stuff like don't use these terms exactly because of this problem. Herman, do you see why this is such an issue? You can't just say, oh, a volcano created it, because volcano isn't just one singular thing. It's actually a multifaceted combination of geological forces interacting at the same time. So it's not even coherent to even say, oh, it's just a volcano, because you have to account for like the seismic shifts in the earth. Like there's so many like different systems that are interacting there that just calling it, wrapping it up and say, oh, the volcano created it. That's not scientific. It's not philosophical, and it's not, if you're a truth seeker, it's not honest. So if you really want to be honest, right, which you seem to be calling us out on, you need to look into how people actually use these words and define them, and not just slap the word creator on them, because you're doing yourself a disservice here.
We know that Herman doesn't give a damn because Herman already hung up, but like I was going to ask like just some general, like, can nothing create something?
Yeah.
And how do you know? You know, like it's like actually like seriously try thinking about this rather than just getting into this like pseudo logic loop of everything had to be created, therefore there's a creator. But I don't know what created that, because maybe that wasn't created. You're allowing yourself to have these gaps in your logic where it suits you. Yeah. But when it comes to whether or not your specific, whatever this deistic creature that you're talking about here, you're getting so upset and trying to focus in on the use of the word guy as if it matters. Like it's just fucking embarrassing to sit here and lay down this logic rules that you yourself are not going to follow in order to try to box us in to some dumbass linguistic trap of the word creation.